The planet Lunara glowed softly under the light of its twin suns. From space it looked peaceful, almost fragile, like a jewel floating in the void. Its inhabitants, the Lunari, were slender, graceful beings with translucent skin that shimmered when the sunlight touched it. They lived in harmony with their environment, building cities that floated above the forests and oceans, delicate structures that seemed to merge with nature itself. But today, that peace was shattered. The Lunari council chamber hummed with tension, filled with the anxious voices of leaders who had never known war. Screens displayed images of burning cities, massive shadowy ships hovering over their planets, and the relentless advance of the Zytrons, a species known for their brutal conquests. "This is beyond anything we can handle alone," said Elder Varen, his voice trembling as he gestured to the images. "Our defenses are no match for their weapons. They will destroy Lunara if we do nothing." Around him, other council members nodded in fear. They had sent scouts and emissaries to nearby systems, but no help had come. The Zytrons were too fast, too powerful, and too cruel. Lunara, with all its beauty and fragile life, seemed doomed. Then a young Lunari named Solara stepped forward. She was not a council member, but she had spent her life studying the stars, listening for signals from distant civilizations. Her eyes sparkled with determination. "There is one hope," she said softly, yet with a firmness that demanded attention. "The Deathworlders." The council fell silent. The Deathworlders were creatures of legend, a race of warriors who came from a world so harsh that only the strongest survived. They were feared and respected across galaxies. Stories told of their massive warships, their unmatched combat skills, and their ability to survive where others would perish. They were not gentle or diplomatic. They did not negotiate, but they could protect, and they had a code. They helped those who truly needed it. "Send a signal," Solara urged. "We must call for help. If they come, maybe Lunara can survive." Elder Varen hesitated, his fingers brushing the smooth console before him. "The Deathworlders are merciless. We risk attracting their wrath if they find us unworthy. And even if they come, the Zytrons may reach us first." Solara stepped closer, her voice steady. "We have no choice. If we do nothing, our world ends. If we act, there is a chance. That chance is worth taking." After a tense moment, the council agreed. The Lunari worked quickly, crafting a signal unlike any they had sent before. It was a call for help, a plea born from desperation but laced with hope. The message contained images of their world, their people, and the threat of the Zytrons. It carried emotion, something that even advanced machines could detect. A pure, raw call for aid. High above the clouds, the signal shot into deep space, a bright beam pulsing through the void, carrying Lunara's plea to the far reaches of the galaxy. For hours the Lunari waited, watching the stars. Days passed, and still there was no reply. Anxiety grew heavier with each passing moment. Children whispered to each other about the Zytrons, and families huddled together in fear. Every shadow in the sky, every distant flicker of light became a potential threat. Then, on the 7th day, something changed. The sky darkened, not from storm clouds, but from immense shapes appearing in orbit. Massive warships, their hulls black and scarred from countless battles, approached Lunara. The sheer size of the ships made the Lunari gasp. These were the Deathworlders. The legends had not done them justice. From their vessels, powerful engines hummed, shaking the very ground below. A strange, guttural sound emanated from the ships, a language unknown to the Lunari but filled with intent and authority. Scouts lowered themselves toward the planet, their forms intimidating yet strangely purposeful. Solara and the council rushed to the viewing platforms. "They came," she whispered, barely daring to believe it. "The Deathworlders. They came." The Lunari population watched from below, a mix of awe and fear in their eyes. These warriors were not like them. They were massive, built for survival and combat, hardened by the harshest environments imaginable. But their arrival brought hope. For the first time in weeks, the shadow of fear lifted, even if only slightly. But not everyone was calm. Sensors picked up Zytron ships at the edge of the system, moving swiftly, intent on destruction. The race against time had begun. The Lunari's saviors were here, but the enemy was already at the door. Solara felt a strange thrill. She had dreamed of the stars, of distant allies, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The moment when hope and fear collided. When survival depended on beings who thrived where others would die. And as the first Deathworlder scouts landed, towering over the Lunari cities, the Council knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. The cry for help had been answered. But at what cost? The massive Deathworlder warships hovered over Lunara like dark mountains in the sky. Their engines hummed with power, sending vibrations through the cities below. The Lunari watched in awe, feeling both fear and hope. These beings were unlike anything they had ever seen. Their ships were scarred and battle-worn, yet every mark told a story of survival, victory, and strength. From the largest ship, a squadron of Deathworlder scouts descended. They moved with a deliberate pace, their armored frames gleaming faintly in the sunlight. Each one was taller than the tallest Lunari building, with limbs thick with muscle and skin hardened like metal. Despite their size and appearance, there was an undeniable precision in their movements, as if every step had been practiced for centuries. Solara led a small group to meet them. Her heart pounded in her chest. The Lunari had prepared for this meeting, but no amount of preparation could erase the fear of standing before living legends. The lead Deathworlder stopped just short of the platform. It was impossible to understand its guttural speech, but its intent was clear. It extended a massive arm in a gesture of peace, though it was still intimidating. The translators activated, converting the sounds into the Lunari language. "We came because you called. You survive or you perish." Solara bowed slightly. "Thank you for answering our plea. Our world. We cannot face the Zytrons alone." The Deathworlder tilted its head. Its glowing eyes scanned the city below, noting the damage already inflicted. Then it spoke again, slower this time, allowing the translators to catch every word. "Zytrons are strong. You are fragile. We protect. You follow, that was all." It did not offer comfort. It did not promise victory, but there was strength in those words that the Lunari had never felt before. The council members exchanged glances. They had called for help, and now it had arrived, silent but unstoppable. Meanwhile, sensors on the Deathworlder ships detected the approaching Zytron fleet. Hundreds of enemy vessels moved toward Lunara with terrifying speed, their dark silhouettes blotting out the stars. The Deathworlders did not panic. They prepared. Weapon systems activated across their ships, energy fields crackling to life. Solara noticed a Lunari general watching nervously. They fight like nothing we have ever seen," he whispered. "Are they invincible?" Solara did not answer. She did not need to. The Deathworlder's presence alone told the story. Every moment they delayed, every movement of their massive bodies, radiated confidence and power. The Lunari had never felt such assurance before. As night fell, the first skirmishes began. Zytron scouts attempted to probe the defenses of Lunara, but the Deathworlders met them in space. Massive energy beams tore through the enemy ships, explosions lighting the darkness like distant stars being born and dying in an instant. The Lunari watched from below, mouths open in disbelief. Their saviors were not gentle. They were unstoppable. On the ground, the Deathworlder scouts moved through the cities, reinforcing defenses, helping to repair damaged energy shields, and preparing the Lunari for the battles to come. They were not friendly in the way the Lunari imagined friends to be, but they were methodical, efficient, and utterly reliable. Solara followed them into the central city. The streets were damaged, buildings cracked from previous Zytron strikes, but the Deathworlders walked through calmly. They did not panic, they did not hesitate. They organized the Lunari forces, demonstrating strategies that were both simple and brilliant. "Stand here. Use the terrain. Wait for them," one Deathworlder said through the translator system, pointing toward the hills and cliffs surrounding the city. Its voice was rough, almost a growl, but precise. The Lunari obeyed, their fear giving way to determination. Hours passed. The Zytrons tested the planetary defenses again and again, only to meet failure after failure. The Deathworlders did not fight with emotion. They fought with the certainty of those who had survived countless worlds and countless battles. Every attack they faced was met with calculated response. Every move countered with unmatched skill. Solara watched as a small group of Deathworlders climbed a damaged city tower to oversee the battlefield. Their silhouettes against the night sky were frightening and beautiful all at once. These beings thrived where others would die. And now they were on Lunara's side. A hush fell over the Lunari population as the Zytron fleet withdrew slightly, regrouping at the edge of the planet's orbit. For the first time, the Lunari realized that victory might not be impossible. They had called for help and the Deathworlders had answered, fierce, unyielding, unstoppable. Solara turned to Elder Varen, her eyes shining. They are here to protect us, but we must also learn from them. If we survive this, we will never be the same again. Varen nodded, still awed. We are witnessing the strength of the Deathworlders. Let us hope the Zytrons understand that too. And in the silence that followed, the twin suns of Lunara dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. The planet's fate now rested in the hands of its legendary protectors, the Deathworlders, and the courage of its own people. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. The twin suns of Lunara had barely risen when the first Zytron warships entered the planet's orbit. They were dark and angular, bristling with weapons that gleamed ominously in the light. The air above the cities shivered with the hum of their engines. Panic swept through the Lunari population, but the Deathworlders remained unmoved, their massive forms standing ready aboard their warships and on the planet's surface. Solara stood on the viewing platform, her heart pounding, yet her mind clear. She had never seen anything like this before. The Zytrons were relentless, their numbers vast, but the Deathworlders were legendary for a reason. Their ships bristled with shields and their weapon systems charged with precision. The battle began without warning. Energy beams tore through the void, lighting the darkness like fireworks on a festival night. Explosions rocked space as the Deathworlder warships met the Zytron fleet head-on. Ships collided, shields flared, and the hum of engines mingled with the roar of weapons. On the surface, Deathworlder scouts moved swiftly through the cities, guiding the Lunari to safety and helping to set up defensive positions. They were terrifying in their efficiency, but they protected the fragile Lunari structures rather than destroying them. Every action seemed deliberate, calculated to minimize harm while maximizing defense. Solara watched as one Deathworlder, taller than the city's tallest tower, lifted a collapsed building with its massive hands to free trapped Lunari families. She felt a mix of awe and gratitude. These were warriors from a Deathworld, beings who thrived where others would perish, yet they showed care in their own way. The Zytrons, confident in their superior numbers, pressed the attack. Their warships launched volleys of energy bolts and missiles, attempting to overwhelm the planetary shields, but the Deathworlders anticipated every move. Their ships moved with coordinated precision, deflecting attacks, intercepting missiles, and countering with devastating firepower. In space, the battle resembled a storm. Ships maneuvered with terrifying speed and accuracy. The Zytrons expected chaos to favor them, but the Deathworlders were calm, almost unnervingly so. Every strike, every movement, displayed centuries of combat experience. On the ground, the Lunari fighters, armed with energy rifles and guided by Deathworlder instructors, joined the defense. For the first time, they felt hope. They were fragile, yes, but under the guidance of these legendary warriors, they could stand against the seemingly unstoppable Zytrons. Solara noticed one Zytron vessel break through the outer shield, descending toward a Lunari city. A Deathworlder scout leaped into action, its massive body moving faster than any Lunari could follow. With a single strike, it disabled the ship's weapons and forced it to retreat. The Lunari gasped, watching the impossible unfold. Strength is not just in numbers, Solara whispered to herself. It is in courage and in skill, in will. The Zytrons began to realize their arrogance had been misplaced. They were powerful, but they had never faced beings who thrived in survival, beings who had fought through every nightmare a galaxy could offer, and lived to tell the tale. The Deathworlders were not just defenders, they were a force of nature. Hours passed, and the battle raged across the skies and cities. Each Zytron strike was met with a counterstrike. Each attempt to break the planetary defenses was met with ingenuity and relentless power. The Lunari watched, their fear slowly replaced with wonder. Solara followed a group of Deathworlders as they moved toward a damaged city tower. The Zytrons had been trying to destroy the energy relay there, but the Deathworlders reached it first. With precise, coordinated actions, they repaired the relay and reinforced it, ensuring the city's defenses stayed active. Even in the chaos, there was a strange beauty in their method. These were creatures born of harsh worlds, forged in death and survival. Yet they brought structure and order where destruction threatened to dominate. By the end of the day, the Zytrons had retreated slightly, regrouping at the edge of the planet's orbit. Though the battle was far from over, the balance had shifted. The Deathworlders had shown their power and determination. They had protected Lunara and inspired the Lunari, proving that even the strongest threat could be challenged with courage, skill, and unity. Solara looked over the city as night fell. Fires burned and the smell of ozone from the weapons filled the air, but hope had returned. The Lunari would survive not just because of the Deathworlders, but because they had seen what strength, courage, and determination looked like. Elder Varen approached, his face still pale from the day's events. "They are unlike anything we have imagined," he said softly. "They are more than warriors. They are protectors forged by the galaxy itself," Solara nodded. "And tomorrow, we will fight again, but now we know we are not alone." The twin moons of Lunara rose into the sky, casting silver light on the battered but unbroken cities. The Deathworlders stood vigilant, watching the horizon. The Zytrons would return, but the Lunari had seen the strength of those who thrived where others would die. The legend of the Deathworlders was no longer just a story. It was their reality, and the first true battle of Lunara's survival had been won. The next morning, the skies over Lunara were quiet, but it was not the peace of safety. It was the stillness before another storm. The Zytrons were regrouping, preparing to strike again, and everyone knew it. Inside the main Deathworlder command ship, the air was tense but calm. The Deathworlder commander, a massive figure in dark armor, stood over a glowing tactical display. Around it, several other warriors monitored the Zytron fleet's movements. Their deep, rumbling voices filled the room as they spoke in their own language. Then translated orders appeared on the holographic screens for the Lunari to follow. Solara was there, standing with Elder Varen. She had been invited to witness the planning, something no Lunari had ever been allowed to see before. "The Zytrons will not stop," said the translator, carrying the commander's words in a deep, steady tone. "If we wait, they will grow stronger. We strike first." The plan was daring. The Deathworlders would lead a small strike team directly into the heart of the Zytron fleet. Their goal was to disable the enemy's command network by boarding the massive Zytron flagship. If they succeeded, the enemy would lose coordination, and the Lunari would have a chance to push them back completely. Solara felt fear, but also excitement. "You are going to their flagship?" she asked, her voice quiet but filled with awe. "Yes," came the reply. "We go where battle is hardest. That is our way." Preparations began immediately. Deathworlders armed themselves with powerful weapons that glowed with energy, their armor locking into place with heavy clicks. A group of Lunari volunteers, inspired by what they had seen, offered to help. They knew the terrain of their system better than anyone. "Your knowledge will guide us," the commander said simply. It was not praise, but it was respect. For the Lunari, that respect meant everything. As the strike team prepared to launch, Solara stood at the edge of the hangar, watching the massive boarding craft come to life. Engines roared, the ground shaking under their power. The Deathworlders moved inside with a calm confidence, like this mission was just another part of their daily lives. The launch was swift. The boarding craft shot into space, weaving through the stars toward the enemy fleet. Lunari watchers held their breath as they tracked the team's progress on the screens. The Zytrons detected the intrusion almost immediately, sending waves of fighters to intercept. But the Deathworlders were ready. Their smaller escort ships engaged the enemy fighters, holding them back with precise bursts of fire. Explosions lit the darkness, but the boarding craft kept going, its shields glowing brightly as it powered through. Inside the craft, the Deathworlders sat in silence, waiting. There was no fear in their faces, only focus. The Lunari volunteers gripped their controls, nervous but determined. At last, the craft slammed into the Zytron flagship's hull. The Deathworlders moved first, blasting open a path with weapons that shook the entire ship. Smoke filled the corridors as they stormed inside, their massive forms unstoppable. Solara watched the battle through the live feed. The Zytrons were fierce, their claws and weapons deadly, but the Deathworlders cut through them with brutal precision. Every movement was efficient, every shot counted. The Lunari volunteers followed, helping to disable systems and guide the Deathworlders toward the command core. Meanwhile, on Lunara, the Deathworlder Warships launched a diversionary attack, drawing away as any Zytron forces as possible. The planet shook with distant explosions, but this chaos gave the strike team the opening they needed. Finally, the team reached the heart of the Zitron flagship. The command core pulsed with dark energy, the center of the fleet's coordination. Without hesitation, the Deathworlder commander planted a device that glowed with a blinding light. "Time to leave," the commander growled through the translator. The team retreated, fighting their way back through the corridors as alarms blared. The ship began to shudder, its systems failing one by one. The boarding craft detached just as the device detonated. A brilliant flash of light filled the void, and the Zitron flagship's control systems went dark. Across the fleet, enemy ships faltered, their attacks becoming chaotic and uncoordinated. On the planet, cheers erupted. The Deathworlders had done it. They had broken the Zitron's command structure. For the first time, the enemy was vulnerable. Solara felt tears in her eyes, not from fear but from pride. "They did it," she whispered. "They actually did it." Elder Varen placed a hand on her shoulder. "And we stood with them. This is not just their victory, it is ours too." The Deathworlders returned to Lunara, their boarding craft scorched and battered but intact. When they stepped out, the Lunari greeted them with quiet respect. There was no celebration yet. The battle was not over. But hope now burned brighter than ever. Night fell on Lunara once again. Fires glowed in the distance, but the stars above seemed closer somehow. The Deathworlders stood watch, their silhouettes dark against the sky, ready for the next fight. Tomorrow would bring the final battle. The dawn over Lunara was red, painted by the light of fires still burning in the distance. The air was heavy with tension. The Zitrons had lost their flagship, but they were not defeated. Their fleet, though disorganized, still outnumbered Lunara's defenses. Everyone knew what was coming, the final assault. The Deathworlders stood ready. Their warships formed a protective wall around the planet, shields glowing faintly in the morning light. On the ground, the Deathworlder scouts and Lunari volunteers prepared the last defensive lines. The fragile cities had been turned into strongholds with energy barriers and traps placed at every possible approach. Solara stood beside Elder Varen on the command platform, looking at the sky. The Zitron fleet was regrouping at the edge of the system, gathering for one last attack. Her hands trembled, but her spirit was steady. She had seen the Deathworlders fight. She had seen what courage looked like. "They will come soon," Elder Varen said softly. Solara nodded, "And we will be ready." When the attack came, it was like a storm. The Zitron ships poured toward Lunara, firing in every direction, desperate to destroy what they could not control. The sky blazed with light as weapons fire streaked across space. The Deathworlder fleet moved to intercept. Their warships, though outnumbered, fought with perfect coordination. Shields absorbed the first wave of fire, then their guns roared back, sending precision strikes into the heart of the enemy formation. One by one, Zitron ships exploded, leaving trails of fire and debris. On the surface, the battle was fierce. Zitron landing craft managed to break through in several areas, disgorging their warriors onto the planet. But this time, the Lunari were not helpless. Guided by the Deathworlders' strategies, they fought back with courage they never knew they had. Solara ran through the streets with a group of Lunari defenders, helping evacuate civilians and directing fire toward advancing Zitrons. She was no longer just a scholar of the stars. She had become a leader. In the sky, the Deathworlder flagship powered forward, directly into the center of the Zitron fleet. Its commander gave one simple order: end it. The battle reached its peak. The Deathworlder ship split the Zitron formation apart, targeting their remaining command vessels. Explosions lit up the void, shaking even the planet below. Slowly, the enemy fleet began to collapse, retreating in panic as their ships were torn apart one after another. On the ground, the last wave of Zitrons was pushed back. The Deathworlders moved like giants through the battlefield, their heavy steps leaving deep marks in the soil. They fought side by side with the Lunari, covering them when they faltered, guiding them when they were unsure. When the final Zitron landing craft was destroyed, silence fell across Lunara. The sky cleared, the last enemy ship fleeing into deep space. The war was over. Solara stood among the ruins of the central city, her chest heaving as she looked around. Buildings were damaged, streets broken, but her people were alive. They had survived. The Deathworlder commander approached. its armor scorched from battle. It looked at the city, then at the Lunari, and gave a single nod. "You fought," the translator said. "You lived." It was not praise in the way the Lunari were used to, but it meant everything. They had earned the respect of a species that respected only strength and courage. In the days that followed, the Lunari began to rebuild. The Deathworlders did not stay to rule over them, but they left behind a small group of warriors to train the Lunari for the future. Solara watched them work, teaching her people how to build stronger defenses, how to fight together, how to survive. "This is only the beginning," Elder Varen said one evening as they watched the twin suns set. "We have been given a gift, not just survival, but knowledge. The Deathworlders have shown us what it means to endure." Solara smiled softly. "Yes, and now we will make sure that Lunara is never helpless again." Above them, the great Deathworlder Warships slowly rose into the sky, leaving Lunara behind. They would answer other calls, fight other battles. But their presence had changed the Lunari forever. Hope had been forged in fire, and it would never fade. As the last ship disappeared into the stars, Solara whispered, "Thank you." The stars above shone brighter than ever, as if answering her. Lunara had survived, and a new future was beginning, one where its people were no longer just dreamers of the stars, but guardians of their own destiny.